CFL 110, your weekly trip around the biggest stories in the Canadian Football League with Jeff Hamilton and Andrew Hustler Patterson.
What's going on, CFL fans? Welcome to another edition of CFL 110 here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Network. Andrew Patterson along with Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press. Some big games to get to coming up this weekend. And of course, the Coolbet lines as we are presented by our friends at Coolbet Canada. And that will also dive into all the action on the August long weekend across the league. Should be a fun one. Great to have you all with us. And let's welcome in my partner in crime here on CFL 110, Jeff Hamilton. Hammer, what's going on? Do you enjoy the long weekend? We got an extra day, usually Tuesdays, but we're dropping this one on a Wednesday today because of long weekend festivities.
Of course, my friend. Usually it's, as you mentioned, Tuesdays for us. Being a day later, I feel like I'm all mixed up in my weeks, but the good news is it's a short week, so I'll be able to put this one behind me as soon as possible. I'm looking forward to chopping up these games, man. It was another great weekend of 3-down football.
No doubt about it, and of course it gets going tomorrow night, Thursday. BC and Hamilton, Edmonton and Montreal on Friday, and then a Saturday doubleheader, kicking off with Ottawa and Toronto and finishing off with a big Western Division matchup between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Calgary Stampeders. We'll dive into the lines and make our picks. Coolbet a little bit later on, but let's get to the rundown. And this is something that's touched most of the teams at some point this year in the Canadian Football League, Jeff, and this is not something that is restricted to the CFL, but holy smokes, are we dealing with a lot of weather. Now, obviously, lightning will happen. There's no real way to predict that. But the wildfires have become a major issue, particularly on the prairies this year. Felt like we dodged a bit of a bullet on Friday night here in Winnipeg. Of course, they had the extended delay and then the postponement of a game earlier in Regina. I don't imagine there's much anybody can do on this, but I do wonder whether the levels that they put in the agreement with the PA are consistently being enforced, and or are they being reconsidered at all because of how much we're dealing with this right now?
Yeah, I don't think it's a safety thing or changing the numbers or changing the equation, Huss. I think a lot of people were surprised, particularly ahead of that Winnipeg Blue Bombers game here in Winnipeg, because the numbers were 10 all day long, and the weather forecasts were predicting 10 through the evening and all the way into the next morning. So it was, and now this is becoming a more common occurrence, Huss. Now, not just with the wildfires, but especially the wildfires, but even just the rain delays, right? The weather, whether you want to call it climate change, whatever you want to refer it to, we're seeing an increase in weather delays over the last X amount of years here. And we're seeing it again this season. And it's getting to a point, Huss, where the clip of potential delays, or even we saw a cancellation earlier this season, is coming at a pace where I'm getting calls and emails from friends and family wondering if they should come back from the lake. My advice to them is always the same. Teams won't cancel a game 2 hours ahead of time. And I think that's kind of the issue here, Huss, that I just don't think is ever going to get fixed. It's never going to get, they're never going to find out a way, at least not with modern technology today, that's going to, especially in the CFL, and this is an important part where the schedule and the lack of resources compared to a league like the NFL leaves them kind of dependent on league revenue to play the game either that day or as soon as possible, right? They can't just cancel games and schedule them down the road. It costs too much and it creates too many headaches logistically for teams. So, but my point in all that is that, because of this clip, we're just going to have to live with it. Like, we're going to have to live with this idea that if a game is going to be threatened, it's going to be threatened all the way into game time, and then any extra time, hour, 2 hours, as the league, in conjunction with the Players Association, will do whatever they possibly can to play that game. I bring up the Players Association, Huss, because I think that's the real important part here. they won't do anything to play the game, that's for sure. And I think that's, of course, rigging numbers. That's not in the equation. Player safety is top of mind, even though bottom line is also top of mind. Player safety is, and the Players Association has a role in this. They've been active in this. The reason why they even had an air quality policy put in place was because of the PA and talking about the issues around health and safety and not being consulted before games were being played in the past. So I think this is really a new normal, something we're going to have to get used to, and I guess hope that the issue gets better before it gets worse.
I'll be honest, and again, I've not talked to any players, so this might be talking about me talking out of my rear end, but I do wonder how they got to that. You know, in all these negotiations, there's give here, there's give there.
I can kind of tell you, Huss, not to hijack the conversation. It was back when, remember in Winnipeg and Edmonton, I think Strevler's first season here, because I believe he was in that game. It took like 3.5 hours. We were there. I remember leaving the stadium at like 1:32 a.m. and the players visibly upset. Like this was like a fork in the road. We need to figure out which direction we're going with this.
And that was a smoke game?
And it was a weather delay game. It was just about the idea of like around the player safety, because whether it's a air quality issue or whether it's a whatever, the big player safety issue, yes, it's the air quality for lungs and that kind of stuff too, but it's also for like hanging around. So if your question was about fire, or wildfires, that's a bit different, but really the focus about delays and playing them because before that game, Huss, there wasn't even like a weather delay like protocols where it was like an X amount of hours. They had to put that into place after that game.
Well, the delays, the Milt Stiegel's jersey retirement game in Winnipeg didn't get started till after 10 p.m., if you recall. I mean, there's been a couple ones, and I believe the rules, if there's lightning within X distance from the stadium, you got to give it another half hour, and that's why there was a lot of waiting. But I'll just quickly say this on the wildfire thing. Like I would, like just taking last Friday in Winnipeg, where, you know, it's borderline and the number that they have is 8. It was 10 most of the day. And to be honest, I don't know, maybe we're just used to this now. I'm like, of course they would play the game. And then I actually saw what the reading was. If it was touch and go, I really do wonder if you pulled every single player in the dressing rooms, whether it wouldn't be unanimous to get out and play the game. So
interesting question.
I will say that. I mean, I do know that, you know, obviously for fans, there are some people that just can't be out in that, and that is an issue. But listen, it's a difficult problem to navigate, to take care of all your stakeholders, and of course, do what the bottom line is, trying to get that product out for fans that are at the building and of course on television. As far as the games go, we kicked it off with a huge win for the Ottawa Redblacks. And I know last week we talked about this. We jumped on them originally as 5.5-point underdogs. This line moved 9 points. They ended up going off as the biggest money line favorite of the week. And man, did they deliver for their fans and for their head coach. And this one was led by their defense. Listen, Ottawa has had some rough games so far this year. The defense stepped up, capped it off with the pick six, and took advantage of the absence of Vernon Adams to get a very important win to keep them relevant at this point in the season in the East.
Yeah, this one just stops the bleeding, Huss, for this team, right?
They needed it so badly.
We've talked about on a couple different shows here just the hype around the Red Blacks heading into this season after breaking that playoff curse last year. And you look at it, and when I say stop the bleeding, it stopped a 4-game losing streak, which, you know, when you play one game a week, that's a long time, especially when you have bye weeks mixed in between there. The other thing is it got them their first victory at home, which at the end of July, when the season starts in June, that's not the ideal place to be getting your first home victory. We know how it's like in Winnipeg and other places where teams are, you know, where the local team is dominant. To not get victories at home can have a major effect. Again, looking here in Winnipeg, like this team will lose one game at home and fans are outraged because they just don't do that at Princess Auto Stadium. So obviously a big victory for Ottawa at 2-6. They're not happy. It's certainly not an ideal record, but they're tied with the Toronto Argonauts, who did them help this week, losing to Winnipeg. So good news for them. I think it kind of lets everybody just take a deep breath, Huss, right? You lose that game. And then you go into this week facing against a very important opponent in Toronto who you're tied with. And you know, the you're holding the stick, to take a hockey idiom, a little bit too tight, right? The vibes aren't there. I'm not saying that they're relaxed in Ottawa, but there is that element of, okay, let's enjoy this one, as you often hear players after victories, get that good feeling and then get to work this week. You mentioned it was the defense, really. It was play against PJ Walker, because I think that's another big thing here, right? As you mentioned, it wasn't the Vernon Adams-led Calgary Stampeders who we were only talking about a week or two ago as being the best team in the league. This was by not a rookie quarterback, as PJ Walker has NFL experience, but it was his first CFL start, and I thought the Ottawa Redblacks defense took full advantage of that. A pivotal point, there was a moment where a pick six in that second half in the fourth quarter ultimately sealed the game when Calgary was starting to show a little bit of life. Walker was starting to show a little bit of confidence in that in the pocket. And just to speak to the offense on Ottawa, yeah, they weren't the ones that stole the spotlight of the game, but it was good to see Drew Brown get back behind center, score a couple touchdowns in that first half. If there's one thing I could say, Huss, he just looks down and out. Like, Drew Brown is like I'm not saying he's like your most optimistic guy, like going around in the locker room pumping everybody out, but like when they would shoot to him out on the camera after he'd throw those touchdowns, like it would look like this guy just had a turnover. You know, I would say, Drew, you know, smile a little bit more. Redblack, you know, you got in the end zone, Redblacks got it, but I think that just speaks to some of the hardship that this team's faced really since the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they played hard for Bobby Dice. They took advantage of a nice situation without having to deal with VA, who'd been so good, and obviously PJ Walker. Oh, and we've talked about this for a number of teams. I mean, backups are backups for a reason. There's a real step down at the most important position. That certainly seems to be the case with the Calgary Stampeders. Speaking of desperately needed wins, I think you could put the Bombers in a different situation, but a similarly desperate team to end their 3-game losing streak. And they did it in one of the more bizarre games that we've seen before, led by Trey Vaval. Jeff, if I told you that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers scored one offensive touchdown, gave up a pick six, and gave up more than 31 points, what do you think the chances of them covering a 6.5-point spread would be? 0%? 0.1? Well, it happened, and it happened on the back. I
think we need our friends at CoolBet to figure out those odds. I think they'd have to bring in a couple extra minds.
I'm trying not to revisit it. Trey Vaval, listen, return game, ever since Janarian Grant walked out the door, it's been a huge problem and an issue in Winnipeg. He seems to be the solution right now with a career game. And then, of course, the Bombers' defense steps up. That, for my money, was one of the best games Willie Jefferson had ever played. And Jefferson was not very noticeable earlier in the season, well, particularly in those games against Calgary when this was starting. So in an absolutely massive but a very bizarre game that also brought up many questions from the Bombers side of things about how they handled their lead at the end of the game. But I guess a win is a win. But a 40-31 win with only one offensive touchdown, just an absolutely bizarre game, but a very important knock in the win column for Winnipeg.
Lots there, Haas. I'll start with Willie Jefferson, because I agree with you. It was a terrific game from him. 4 pass knockdowns, a strip sack that led to a touchdown by Jay Person the other way, right? And that would have been the answer to your previous question. You would need a lot of magic to happen in the other phases, and that's exactly what they got. Trey Vaval, obviously, a 93 and a 97-yard return, became the first Bomber in franchise history to return a kickoff and a punt. He was the first one to kick off or return 2 touchdowns in a game since Janarian Grant. Obviously, we know the years of Janarian Grant, how special he was here, and a fitting that he was in the building to witness it all, because this is really what it comes down to, Huss, is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have been trying to look for Janarian Grant's replacement since they let him walk out the door a couple years back, right? So, I think Trey Vaval had shown glimpses. He had shown some of the really good in his game in the previous games for Winnipeg, and being able to hit those holes. He looks and kind of plays a little bit like Janarian Grant. I don't think he's as tough as Janarian Grant. There's few people who are the size of Janarian Grant, which is about 5'8", 5'9", not that heavy, who will take that kind of contact and that kind of punishment, but Trey Vaval showed just that, and hitting the holes in the way he did. So I think we saw a lot of that kind of flashes. So it's not super surprising. I think the 2 touchdowns in a game obviously wasn't exactly expected, but I do think that certainly people who've been watching him this year have waited for him to find that hole and really bust out. He's been maybe a missed tackle on a couple different occasions from doing that. What I thought was really interesting, Huss, was the post game when I was in the locker room interviewing the guy. Like at the end of what was probably only about 2.5 minutes of back and forth, I wanted to give the guy a hug. He was just like, his takeaway was relief. He was just relieved. It harkened back to Jerry Rice's Hall of Fame speech, where he talked about how miserable he was as a player because of all the pressure he put on himself. Like whereas, you see, whether it's been a veteran player or a guy who's played his first game, we've seen that this season where a guy's really done impressive work in his first year, and you go into the locker room and he's borderline waiting for you to get in there, and he's happy to talk about it, and he's excited about the win. This guy it felt like a therapy session. He was just talking about how much pressure he feels and how it's, he's learning how to be a pro, and it's about stacking these days, so some cliche things mixed in there, but it was really interesting and kind of refreshing to a certain degree. I'm not saying I want guys to be feeling that kind of stuff, but to speak openly the way he did, I thought was super impressive. I feel like I've been talking a bit here, Huss, so I'm going to flip the script onto you, and I'm going to set up what would have been a Bombers potential collapse at the end when down 6 points in that game, pressing with very little time remaining and very much in kicking zone to put it in a 2-point game and ultimately ice this game away. The Bombers decided to put the ball in the air with Chris Strevler, and it was ultimately and to Jarris Stearns, who is like he was
giving up 7 inches in that battle.
Yeah, about 7 inches in a DB receiver battle. So tell me, Huss, try to make it make sense, if you will. The Bombers' move, which appears to be defended both by offensive coordinator Jason Hogan and head coach Mike O'Shea. Make it make sense for us, Huss.
It doesn't make sense. It won't make sense. And, being in the stands at that moment, I mean, you could hear a literal collective groan of 30,000 plus people saying, what the hell are we doing? Listen, it was a dangerous play that burned them and could have ended up with losing the football game. I mean, it wasn't like the Toronto didn't at times, have some good mojo on offense. It
wasn't long before that, Huss, that Nick Arbuckle dialed one up to Coxie and he walked into the end zone. Like that was essentially what they were setting up to do again.
Listen, and I guess they're not going to bury each other. The head coach obviously could veto that play. He didn't. So, I mean, it's inevitably on the top guy, but obviously the OC has a big part in it. And I get it. You want to support your quarterback and you want to give confidence in him. But guys, there's a time and place for everything. And up 6 in a game like Friday's was not the time to get cute and try to, go for style points. Sergio Castillo would have given you a 9-point lead. You would have been able to run off another 40 seconds off the clock. That should have been it. And, listen, they dodged a bullet on that one, and I would say Mike O'Shea and Jason Hogan are fortunate for that.
I'm not letting you move on. I'm not going to go on a rant here, Huss, but I'm not going to be nearly as diplomatic. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was insanely stupid. The Bombers, both teams deserved to lose that game, but the Bombers decided they were going to really deserve to lose that game, and they lucked out. Because of their defense, who shut down Arbuckle on that, and then again later on. But the reality is, the thing that bugs me the most is I understand the idea of standing behind your quarterback, behind your offense, behind your team, whatever it is. But if there's one thing that gnaws at me about this coaching staff, the leadership of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, really through this Mike O'Shea era, is this inability to admit when they're wrong. Right? And it goes back to, what was it, 2016 or before that, or just after 2017 in BC, when they decided to pull out for a 62-yard field goal. They took the ball away from Matt Nichols in what was his best game as a Bomber and put it in to a 62-yard field goal where Justin Medlock had to use the what do you call that? The tee that he hadn't used in years, right? Like, and then Mike O'Shea saying he'd do it all over again, or if it's one of the Grey Cup games, right? The last Grey Cup game where they would do it all over again. It's like no one's asking you to roll back time and change it. They're asking you to recognize that maybe it wasn't the smartest play. How you could honestly make that argument that was the right play, that for some reason that Mike O'Shea's explanation was that they were crowding the box and eventually you're going to have to burn them. You almost burnt yourself because you could have literally done 2 kneels, kicked the ball, wasted time off the clock, and made a 9-point game and put them in an impossible situation. Like, this idea that you could say anything other than maybe we need to rethink that one. Like, you don't even have to do full admission, Huss. You could say maybe, just maybe we would rethink that. And the part that bothers me about it wasn't even Zach Collaros. So while Jason Hogan said it was the right call and a missed throw by Chris Streveler, did you not watch the game or two before where Chris Streveler threw a pick 6? Not to mention had thrown a pick 6 earlier in the game. So like thrown 3 interceptions. Like, this is a guy who I love Chris Streveler as a human, but you cannot be putting the ball in his hands at that point in the game, and it's inexcusable to then say you do it all over again.
You're down 6? Sure. Up 6? What are we doing here? And that was a question that was collectively asked, I think, by everyone. Easier to talk about it after a win, though, than if it actually had burned them, and they've managed to find a way to lose that game. Heck of a game between Edmonton and Hamilton this week. Cody Fajardo continues to show that he can still play, and I think he has been a significant upgrade in the quarterback position. If he got a little bit more help, hello, Julian Grant, maybe the Elks win that game. But man, what a story Bo Levi Mitchell continues to write in Hamilton. He hits a milestone surpassing Doug Flutie on the all-time passing yards list while winning their 6th game in a year. A very stark contrast to the way their season started last year. And now it's the Hamilton Tiger Cats in first place in the East while the Elks continue to struggle to find a victory.
Yeah, 6 straight victories now for Hamilton after starting the season 0-2. They're easily one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team. Well, we'll get to who is the hottest team. I know a lot of people in these parts won't be happy to talk about it. But as far as the Ticats go, I mean, another great performance from Bo Levi Mitchell, right? Is he just not silencing all his critics from a couple of years ago, myself included? This guy's playing some of the best football, if not the best football in his career right now. And to surpass Doug Flutie to, in the all-time passing, I think to move into 9th, I believe it was, to move past Doug Flutie. And I believe he did get a message from Doug Flutie afterwards saying, keep going and whatnot. To do it in that kind of vintage Bo Levi Mitchell performance was certainly fitting. To your point, Huss, like, what a demoralizing loss it was for the Elks. You heard Cody Fajardo say after the game of all the losses, and they dropped to 1-6 is it 1-6 or 1-7? We have them at 1-6, I think. Is like, of all the losses they've had this year, this is the one that hurts the most, and I believe it. I mean, you talk about the end of the game. I mean, I don't want to, kick a guy when he's down. Keon Julian Grant obviously has to catch that ball. That's prime time moment. That's through your hands, like literally through your hands. And to hear Cody Fajardo say after the game, we let that one slip through our fingers was borderline poetic, as if he had seen the replay right before he did the post-game interview. The other thing too is, Huss, they got stuffed on the line late in the first half, right? A couple opportunities from the 1-yard line. That's obviously the difference in a 4-point game. Cody Fajardo gets picked off, in that fourth quarter. That was critical. So, there's, again, it's costly mistakes. It's movement in the right place. And you have to think now, man, I mean, and I know hindsight's 2020, and, and you and I certainly aren't anti-Trey Ford guys, but I think you do need to think about where this team would be had they started Cody Fajardo, right? I think, it was interesting to hear Bo Levi Mitchell after the game talk about how Cody Fajardo was one, if not the most disrespected quarterback in recent years. And I think that rings true. I do think that this guy's been criticized a lot. And he's the thing about Cody Fajardo, he'll never give up. Right. I'm not saying there are quarterbacks in this league that do give up, but this guy will never give up. And, we're seeing that. We saw him start out the game impressive. 16 for 16. I think that was the 9th longest streak to start a game in CFL history. So he's doing everything he can to get that done. And my final comment on Trey Ford, I think it's interesting to note Stephen Dunbar did an interview with TSN, after his touchdown. And he was asked about Cody Fajardo, and he kept saying, he didn't keep saying, but he did mention about Cody that he's the first one there and the last one to leave. And when you consider the knocks on Trey Ford about putting in the work and the effort, it was an interesting choice of words. It might not be connected. It might be directly connected. But I don't see how you can hear that kind of interview in a game, given the history with the Elks and their quarterback situation, and not think, oh, that's an interesting comment to make about Fajardo versus the other guy.
I was listening to Naylor and Dusty chop it up on EST earlier this week, and they were mentioning in a conversation with Farhan through camp, most people around there thought that Cody Fajardo showed in camp that he was the better quarterback, but they had sort of made their commitment to the future. This was Trey Ford, and obviously you can only go so far. It will be interesting to see if Trey gets back in at some point, or whether Cody can win a few games for this Elks team and get them into a position of potentially playing for a crossover or having a sniff at third place in the West. Hammer, we have waited until this spot to speak of the number one team in the Canadian Football League. And I know around here in Manitoba, many people won't want to hear this, but I don't think there's any doubt right now after what they did to Montreal, albeit without some key players and without Davis Alexander, that the Saskatchewan Roughriders at this point of the season are the class of the CFL and the number one team in just about everybody's power poll.
Yeah, they have to be. They have the best record in the league. And it's interesting, right? Well, we talk about other teams and we talk about some of the issues they have, even if you talk about the Montreal Alouettes, who they just defeated, just absolutely didn't defeat, man. They shit kicked them. They dominated them. The Montreal Alouettes got the furthest they got into Saskatchewan territory was their 46-yard line. They didn't even get close to the red zone, right? So there was an absolute dominance. So, but to my point, you can look at, yes, clearly Montreal is down their quarterback. They're down a couple, key receivers. Heck, so is Saskatchewan. Obviously, they have Trevor Harris, who is the difference here. I mean, he's playing much like Levi Mitchell, some of his best football of his long CFL career this season. But he doesn't have Keon Schaefer-Baker, who got hurt in week 1. He doesn't have Sean Bain Jr., who hasn't played all season. He doesn't have Samuel Emulis, who missed a second straight game. Like, those guys are great receivers, and they don't have them. They went through their O-line injuries. They had issues in their secondary to start the year. They're giving up too many yards. They have figured this thing out. And for those people, maybe this will hurt some of those who already don't like to hear this news, or maybe it will help help them understand. Maybe it'll do both. But the Saskatchewan Roughriders are looking and talking, and most importantly, playing like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of the past 5 years. They're a cohesive unit. They're well coached. They have a leadership group. They have good quarterback play. They have a run game. They're getting good O-line play. They're talking after the game, Huss. Get this. We are focused on going 1-0 each week. It's like
Where have we heard that
Corey
before?
Mays has picked up the Winnipeg Blue Bombers organization. I won't be surprised, Huss, that at the end of this season, okay, the Saskatchewan Roughriders win the Grey Cup. They're on the stage. They get the confetti going. They lift it. Corey Mays is back in the media room, basking in his glory in front of reporters. To which point he grabs it, he puts his hand, puts it back behind his neck, pulls off the mask that he's been wearing all season, and it's Mike O'Shea's evil twin. And meanwhile, Mike O'Shea hasn't been coaching the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's the real Mike O'Shea in Saskatchewan. I kid, obviously. That's a ton of credit deserving to Corey Mace, but that's what we're seeing. We're seeing complimentary football. We're seeing confidence, and we're seeing a team that no matter who they're playing, and importantly, Huss, where they're playing, because this team is 4-0 on the road this season. The Riders are finding a way to win. And that's an impressive situation for them under Corey Mason, just his second year. But I'm not going to say I'm surprised, because we saw a taste of it last season. And this is, and as I keep saying this, probably the fifth time I've said it on our show, I had the Riders to win the Grey Cup this year, but I pulled back my prediction because of their O-line issues. They are making me eat crow. They're making everybody who thought they weren't going to be impressive this year eat crow, and hopefully they continue this thing on, because I've also said a couple times on this show, when's that 7-game losing streak going to kick in? They're running out of runway to lose 7 in a row. So everything's going well in Rider
anytime soon. I'll say this about Saskatchewan, two things that really stand out. Their defense is nasty, and defense travels. And, we've seen what they've been able to do on the road. Last week, a perfect example, albeit against a depleted Alouettes team. They're giving you nothing, and you got to earn every single yard. And for teams that aren't ready to play at a high level, you're not going to get those yards, and you can end up like the Alouettes did last week. And listen, we've talked a lot about Levi Mitchell and what he's doing. We can't forget about the season that Trevor Harris is having. He's going for 70% every single game. The guy's pushing 40 years old. He can still sling it. Is he mobile? No. Does he get the ball out quicker than anybody in the Canadian Football League? Yes. The receivers are catching it, and they're well balanced. I mean, they've got an excellent run game. They've got a great complement of receivers, a quarterback that's playing at a high level, a defense that we just mentioned has been elite. And you mix in, really their biggest issues has been consistency in their kicking game. And when you're winning by the margins that the Riders have so far, they're in pretty good shape right now. So, get the flowers out right now. And many people say the season doesn't start till Labor Day. Holy smokes, is Labor Day shaping up to be amazing. And it'll be incumbent on the Bombers to win and keep pace with the Riders so that they are at least in the conversation with this team come Labor Day Classic. And, of course, the Banjo Bowl. Let's get to the lines for Coolbet this week. We've already seen a little bit of line movement from the opening lines yesterday. But, Hammer, we start out with a real tasty one Thursday night in the Hammer, Tim Hortons Field, potentially expecting a sellout, which would be amazing for the Ticats to see their fans step up and support them, considering the run that they're on right now. And they got the BC Lions coming in off of a bye at 3-5 right now. I think you can make the argument that BC might be better than their record is, but guess what? This is what their record is. And they're in a dogfight in the West to stay right there with Winnipeg and within striking distance of Calgary and Saskatchewan. The Ticats are 3-point favorites at home. To be honest, I kind of think that this line maybe should be a little bit higher based on what we've seen and the fact that they are playing at home. This is a long trip for BC. But I also do
for Hamilton.
But I also do think that Nathan Rourke is going to have something to say about this one. My big question is, can the BC defense stop Levi Mitchell and Kenny Lawler and company? And I'm not sure about that. Right now, -3, Hamilton, BC. What side are you on?
Well, I look at that. You to your point about the line, you said it's 3 points, obviously in favor of the home team, in Ticats, and that, that's a little bit surprising to me, Huss. It's not incredibly surprising. Couple things, as I interrupted you in your part. This is a short week for Hamilton, right? Having played Saturday during the day, they had the rain delays, so I'm not saying it went into the evening per se, but they got a quick turnaround to play on the first game of this slate. BC's coming off the bye week, right? We've seen teams impress with that extra time. I do think there's, to your point, this is not going to be an easy situation in the West when you have Calgary and Saskatchewan ahead of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, all of which are ahead of you. So I'm not saying desperation time is necessarily in full throttle there, but urgency needs to be in BC. You can't drop to 3-6. You look at the way now, granted it was on the road for Hamilton, but Edmonton, a team that is also desperate, had a lot of opportunity to beat Hamilton in that game, right? A team that we are pretty much counting out now at 1-6. So I do think I don't think it's going to be a blowout for Hamilton. We've also seen Hamilton win their games in last kind of minute comebacks in the fourth quarter, right? So it hasn't been like they've been dominating teams and riding off to victory. So the point margin does kind of make sense. In fact, Huss, I think it makes so much sense. I'm actually going to go with the BC Lions. Do I feel really comfortable about it? No. Am I telling you to run to the Lions and go jump on the Lions? No. But I do think, to your mention, I think Nathan Rourke's is getting better. I think there's some people who do benefit more from a bye than others, and I do think that includes the quarterback position. So I do think that Nathan Rourke is going to put this game on his shoulders and expect to dissect the Hamilton secondary, which has given up, has made plays certainly, but has also given up some high yardage counts too. So all things considered, I think BC comes off the bye week. They show up, needing this victory. It's not going to be an easy one, but I think BC, if they don't cover, if they don't win the game, I do think they cover it.
Yeah, this is a really, really tough pick. And I think this is part of the reason why the line moved the way that it did. And you nailed the short week for Hamilton, and BC coming off the bye, I think is a
don't
real
underestimate
big factor.
One of those
game.
things can be a major factor, Huss. When you combine those two, it could be disastrous.
No, exactly. And listen, I mean, BC, they lose this game. Like, they're at the midway point of their season. This is their 9th game of the year.
You can make the argument,
6.
man, if they lose this game and Winnipeg wins this week, that they probably aren't making the playoffs.
Playing for the crossover. I mean, they're basically battling Ottawa and Toronto. I will say this, though. I mean, I've got enough confidence in what BC or what Hamilton has been doing, but I think I am going to lean with you in this one just based on the circumstances around this game. And, the fact that, BC, I do think Hamilton's got a real advantage on the coaching side. I think Buck Pierce is still kind of getting the hang of being a first-year head coach, and I think Scott Milanovich is showing that he learned some tough lessons the last few years. But let's see if we can get a thriller and have this one a 3-point game, one way or the other, and get the cover.
Surprised it's not 3.5. I feel like it's crazy. Yeah, I know.
And then people bet BC. I mean, that's essentially, there's a lot of people on these same lines. And I think when you get that hook on the extra half point, I mean, particularly when you're in and around a field goal, for a game that I think is so tough, if you told me that it was 2.5, I think I might take Hamilton. So I think we're basically looking at, a very tight game, and we'll see whether it can land within the 3, regardless of who wins.
Watch no one make any money, and it's just a 3-point game.
Speaking of it, we got another 3-point home favorite, Montreal over Edmonton. This certainly suggests that Davis Alexander won't be back. A couple of the top receivers on Montreal still out. And the Elks trying to find a way to win. I'll start out on this game, and I think I'm going to take the points with the Edmonton Elks. I think that Cody Fajardo, especially coming back to Montreal, is going to have a little something for Montreal. Knows the team well. And listen, right now, I think with MBT certainly they had no answer for the Saskatchewan defense last week. Edmonton's at the bottom of just about every defensive metric. It is really atrocious what they've been doing defensively. Can they be a little bit better and give Cody the opportunity to win a football game? I think that they can. A lot of this is going to be on the shoulders of the quarterback, but as you mentioned before, he has been playing quite well. They have been really close. I think Hamilton right now is a much better team than the Montreal Alouettes with the injuries that Montreal is having right now. And listen, I know the game was at home, but they really should have won that. You make one catch and then you've got to win. So I will take Edmonton on the road and as a 3-point underdog against the Montreal Alouettes, and wouldn't be surprised if they can even get a win and make things a little more interesting at the bottom of the CFL standings.
Well, Huss, there's not going to be early tension between you and I through the first 2 games because I'm there with you. I think what we saw from Montreal last week was garbage. It was just, and McLeod Bethel Thompson, who a week before that took a shot at the CFL and TSN panel for dogging him, he looked like dog crap last week. And I just don't see, to your point, them rebounding against an Edmonton team that's led by Cody Fajardo, who's going to have some feelings, man. We know he has feelings about, Montreal and being in Montreal and having played in Montreal, all those good things leading them to a cup in 23. This is to me, this is an opportunity for him to ball out and to put again, because the focus isn't going to just be on Cody Fajardo, right? It's not going to be, for Cody, it's not going to be, I need to throw 300 passing yards to, so that the Montreal Alouettes know what they gave up or regret what they gave up. It's going to be winning that game. That's going to be the most important thing to him, not just for, again, that message to his former team, but for the Edmonton Elks, who we talked about have been close with Cody Fajardo, but just haven't gotten the job done in his 2 starts. So I'm with you. I think that, Montreal, the defense is not good enough for their offense right now, their lack of production on offense. I think I'd keep a close eye on the potential return of Austin Mack. I don't know where Tyson Philpott is at this point. I don't think he's right around the corner, but Austin Mack, clearly, when they're missing, him in that receiver group, there's issues here, right? There's only so much Tyler Snead and Cole Speaker and Charleston Rambo can do, right? Without those key players in there. Those guys look real damn good when Austin Mack and Tyson Philpott are playing, not so much when they're out. So I'm with you. I'm going to go and I'm going to take the points on the road for Edmonton to what I think is going to be an Edmonton Elks victory.
This may sound familiar, folks, but our next game, Ottawa-Toronto, is the exact same. Home favorite of 3 points. We've essentially got 3 pick'ems, and we're adding in home field advantage. Ottawa coming off the big win. Toronto trying to probably figure out how they lost that game in Winnipeg. You like the Argos -3 or the Ottawa Redblacks to cover?
This one's a tough one, man. It's a tough one because I do think of all the games, us clearly seeing that we both picked the 2 Road Warriors in the previous games. I think home field advantage is going to have a major impact in this one. Both are on okay weeks, right? They're both playing Saturday. Bombers played Friday. The Red Blacks played Thursday, so neither of them are coming off a short week. They know each other well. I do think we're not going to see Chad Kelly again this week. It doesn't look like, so it's back to Nick Arbuckle. I don't think Nick Arbuckle's played badly. There's been some issues, I think, with, especially his connection with DeMonte Coxie, who has 390 something yards or something and receiving yards in the last 2 games, both against Winnipeg. But I just, even with the momentum that Ottawa was able to build, I just think that Toronto comes up with a game plan. I'm going to be taking the home field advantage, and I'm going to take what I think is a head coaching advantage of Ryan Dinwiddie over Bobby Dice. I know this is a game that both teams need, right? This is a playoff game, right? This is the team that loses this game is likely to not make the playoffs. So obviously that's not true. There's lots of season to be played, but when you're trying to chase the one team that's you're neck and neck with and you lose to them, that's obviously going to cost you in the standings. So I think Toronto rebounds from their loss to Winnipeg, because you got to remember this too, Huss. If Trey Vaval doesn't have the game of his life, I don't think Toronto wins that game, and probably handily. So I'm going to go back to Toronto getting back on the win column, and I'll take them to win by at least 3.
Listen, I'm not going away from you on this one. I'm with you on Toronto. This is probably the game that I like the most based on the lines right now. Listen, I just think that Toronto is a step above Ottawa despite where their record is right now. I mean, they have some games, they have some losses on their record that frankly should be wins. They have found a few crazy ways to lose football games, including last Friday with the special teams disaster and the touchdown going back the other way. But when it comes down to it in a game that is so huge between these teams, I've got confidence in Ryan Dinwiddie. I've got confidence in the experience of the Argonauts that they'll come up and find a way to win. And the 3 points does not really concern me. I mean, I think if this was 4, I would still be on Toronto right now. Could it be close? Will Ottawa be playing for Bobby Dice? Yeah, for sure. I just do think that based on, where this line is, I think Toronto's a class above Ottawa right now, and I guess we'll find out. But I will definitely be backing the Toronto Argonauts at -3. So we've got BC +3, Edmonton +3, Toronto
on the brink
-3.
on a brink of a mutually agreed upon CFL 110.
Well, let's see. Do we run the table for a 4-gamer? Winnipeg at Calgary. Good news for both teams at practice. Stanley Bryant back at practice. Zach Collaros back at practice. But Vernon Adams, who has shredded the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in their 2 games earlier this season, is back, and that has made Calgary a 5-point favorite in the 3rd and final matchup of the regular season between these two teams.
So this one is tough, right? Because I think we can assume or confirm even that Zach Collaros is playing this week. I'm super confident in saying that. So he'll be back behind center, so we don't have to worry about, well, not saying Zach's had a great season. However, I do think, we do still need to worry about potential turnovers and stuff like that, but I do think it brings the offense more confidence over Chris Streveler. I do, for sure. So there's that part. This is why I'm taking the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on the road in Calgary. Okay? I know they got their butts kicked in Calgary already, twice by Calgary this year, including once in Cowtown. I just think that this is a game that's going to be personal to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They don't have an opportunity to win the season series, but they're not going to want to get swept. And so I think there's not a desperation here, but I think Winnipeg needs to start stacking some wins here. And mostly why I'm taking Winnipeg. And again, I'm not suggesting Winnipeg's going to win this game. I'm going to take every one of those 5 points that they offer us here, Huss. My thing is while Vernon Adams, no doubt, has torched the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the past and has played well, this is his first game back after missing a game. And I'm not saying that it's going to be, he's not rolling into this game with back-to-back great games. He's rolling into this game after a concussion protocol, right? A concussion protocol that didn't just so happen to line up with next week's game as far as how long he should have stayed out. They made the decision to sit him out in an important game. So I do think that while I expect him to play well, I don't think he's going to come and be horrible out there. I do expect him to be a slow starter. I do expect him to make maybe more mistakes than he's used to. And we know when Vernon Adams starts making mistakes, they tend to continue. So I'm banking on a desperate/urgent Winnipeg team, having already lost to a team twice this season, is going to be pissed off in Calgary, and as well as a quarterback in Vernon Adams, who, yes, I still think he's going to perform well. I just don't think he's going to be VA that we know. And so that's why I'm going to take every little bit of those points and take the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on the road.
I love the word that you used. This is going to be personal for the Bombers. They have not been embarrassed by many teams over the course of the last 5-6 years. And it certainly hasn't happened in back-to-back games the way it did with Calgary earlier this year. I do think that they come into this game knowing their opponent, knowing the challenge ahead of them, and knowing that they have to be so much better than they've been over the course of the past month if they're going to win this football game. It's a huge boost to get Stanley Bryant back as well. There's been some protection issues, with the loss of a guy that has been the pillar of the Bomber offensive line. And of course, Zach Collaros, I think, goes into this game, I think, with something to prove as well. I mean, look at his performance in those 2 games, the amount of interceptions, the turnovers by the offense. They have a whole nother level to get to that they're going to have to if they're going to win. But I really do think that this Bomber team, I just have a hard time. And maybe this is, again, hanging on the history the last 5 years. And I know it's a new team and it's a new year. It just doesn't seem possible that they could get run out the building 3 times by the Calgary Stampeders, by anybody, to be honest. So I think this is going to be a tight game. Like, will they win? Possibly. Could they lose? Absolutely. But I really do feel like this is going to be a much more intriguing and close game in the 4th quarter than we've seen in these other games. And because of that, I'm with you. I'm going to take the 5 points right now. And for the first time ever, we are in agreement on our 4 games. Watch us go 0-4.
Now I know how Joey Chestnut feels.
Yeah. So, why don't we do this? Because I will say this. To me, the hardest game to pick was BC Hamilton. And that is also the first game of the week. Why don't we do the last three? We'll take Edmonton, Toronto, and Winnipeg. We'll put that up. People can get on it, and they'll have an extra day to bet it over at CoolBet. Just go to coolbet.com. You'll see in the top the combo cards, the CFL 110 boosted parlay. We'll probably take the 3s to 3.5, and then get an extra half point with the Bombers. We'll give ourselves maybe a little bit more of a cushion, teasing the half point just so there's no ties. And I know the fellas Jake, Pat, and the guys will give us a nice little boost. So we will get that up in the combo cards at CoolBet. That should be live right now, actually. One other thing I'll let people know, especially Bomber fans or even Rider fans in the Winnipeg area, if you tune into Winnipeg Sports Talk and our socials, as well as the CoolBet socials, we are running a contest beginning later on today, or tomorrow, I guess, on Winnipeg Sports Talk, where we've got the last 2 spots on the Huss Bus to Labor Day. We've got an incredible tour with the 1930 crew. CoolBet always does great trips, and we figured with their support of CFL 110, why not send a couple Bomber fans to the Labor Day Classic with myself and an unbelievable crew. So pay attention to our socials and Winnipeg Sports Talk for details on how you can get in that contest, which we'll announce a week before the Labor Day game, to send a Bomber or Rider fan or just a CFL fan, someone that likes a good time, to come out to Regina with all of us for Labor Day weekend and the most fun weekend of the year.
Been to the last 10 of them. They're fun.
League.
They're fun.
Listen, it's been great. As someone that went to 10 without seeing a win, the Labor Day Classics have been a lot more fun since the Bombers have gotten really good. But listen, whether your team is great or they stink, it is the biggest party of the season, the party on the prairies, and anything can happen. I mean, we were all there pumping our chests out in, 2013, when the Bombers were 7-1 and the Riders were 1-7. And what happened? The Riders won the Labor Day game and then won the Banjo Bowl here. So sometimes there is a nature of throwing out the records, although the Saskatchewan
and even what you said before, Huss, this one's
out.
going to be a massive one. If the Bombers want to continue to repeat as West champions, that's not only the team in their way at 7-1, they also haven't played them yet this season and played them 3 times, twice of which are in Winnipeg. So there is an opportunity for Winnipeg to pick away at that, obviously, in those 3 affairs. Wouldn't it be neat if there were 4 matchups between these teams this year, which would likely mean a matchup in the West Final? Just on our way out, CFL Futures over at CoolBet. Always like to update you on that. We do have an official new Grey Cup favorite. It is those Saskatchewan Roughriders. They are plus 275 to win the Grey Cup. Montreal is plus 350. The Stamps have drifted a little bit to plus 375. The Ticats right there, plus 380. And then a big gap after those 4 teams to Winnipeg at 8-1. And then you've got the Argos at plus 1550, BC 17-1, Ottawa 50-1, and the Edmonton Elks 80-1. Those are your Grey Cup odds right now live over at CoolBet. The lines are up. We'll have the CFL 110 parlay up for you as well if you want to ride with the 2 of us. Enjoy the games, kicking off Thursday night with BC at Hamilton, finishing up with the Bombers looking to get one back on the Calgary Stampeders on Saturday night, 6 p.m. Central. Hammer, great stuff. Enjoy the games this week, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week with another edition of CFL 110. Always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy the games this weekend and responsible gambling. That's the key to all of this, but looks like some exciting ones this week.
No doubt about it. Big thanks to Michael Remus doing a bang-up job to get us on the air and set it all up. And, of course, a big thanks to CoolBet. Check the CFL 110 parlay and stay tuned to WST Socials for how you can win a trip with us to the Labor Day Classic in Regina. For Michael Remus, Jeff Hamilton, I'm Andrew Patterson. Have a great one. Make sure to join us daily, 1 p.m. at Winnipeg Sports Talk for the WST Daily Show, hitting the CFL 5 days a week.
You've been listening to CFL 110. Tune in next week for more great Canadian football discussion.